Hi, everyone. My name is Arisa, and I'm most definitely an alcoholic, and it's great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in my recovery and an invitation to you to join in yours. The date of my last drink was October the 13th of 1993, and the woman who walked in the doors, uh, she couldn't possibly have not gone even a day. So I like to keep it very, very upfront in my mind that this is still for me very much about one day at a time. I am an alcoholic. And if I don't stay connected to that first step, statistically speaking, my chances of being here till the end of my life are not very high. Very few people get sober and live sober and stay sober and die sober. This has been an incredible journey. You guys gave me the topic of guided by grace. What a wonderful thing. For those of you who just give a couple of basic details, my home group is the Beacon Group in Boston, Massachusetts. My sponsor's name is Mary, and I originally walked into the rooms down in Corpus Christi, Texas. And if you don't know where that is, um, it's just north of Mexico. Think banana trees, palm trees, beaches, that sort of thing. And now I've got 2 feet of snow outside. Boston's the only place I ever said, I don't want to live there. So I have now lived here longer than anywhere else. I did pretty much all of my drinking in Corpus Christi or Houston or Austin, at least in Texas. But I got sobered there too. And then I got to go to New York and then I got to come to Boston and I've traveled the world and gone to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings all over the place. It is my way of life. And I got to tell you, if you woke up this morning and you go, today's just a great day to get sober, and that just made you feel like sunshine was coming out the top of your head, you're not my people. I mean, I did not come here because I thought it was a good idea. I came here because I was out of what I thought were good ideas. I really did not want to give up power, choice, control. I had to try absolutely everything before I was willing to do what I thought was really stupid things, like go to meetings and listen to other people and read literature and wash ashtrays and all that sort of stuff. Um, I'm not one of these people. One of my earliest resentments was how many people talked about getting to come into the rooms and you got to go to treatment and they talked about having 30 great years or 10 great years or 30 great days for that matter, of drinking and using. And for me, I am the girl that add alcohol, it's instant disaster. My first night out, I get a minor in possession. I mean, and I'm a straight A plus student, not an A student. I mean, I am like the good girl who, you add alcohol to, and all of a sudden it is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All bets are off. I mean, I'm breaking into the liquor cabinet of somebody else's grandparents' house, by taking the screws out because it's padlocked. I mean, that's what half a nip inside of me will do. And within a couple of months, I'm up on Sixth Street in Austin, drinking in a bar. And first night in a bar, I get abducted and raped. I don't get small consequences. I am the girl who gets, thrown off the cliff real quick. And I'm grateful for that today, but I was not when I first came here. I was an underage drinker, and so my favorite drink is what do you got? I mean, I've never had anything that has a cork or anything that has much of a name, like Everclear Punch, like that's Mad Dog 2020. Like those are the things that I drank because I drank for proof. I drank to get different because when I drink, it does something for me that it evidently doesn't do to everybody. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand what it meant. Today, I'm married to a non-alcoholic, and he's so cute. He's just adorable. And when he drinks, he gets this kind of slightly tipsy, out of control feeling. So he stops. The man buys argon gas and he squirts it into the wine bottle. And then he tries to put a cork in it, and a few weeks go by. I mean, there's dust on these things, and he'll pull it out and then he'll sniff it. And if it's not, he pours it down the drain. Like that's an alcohol problem. Okay. I don't know about you, but I never had a problem with alcohol. I don't ever expect to have a problem with alcohol. Me and alcohol, like it's my solution. Like I get good when I drink alcohol. When I'm drinking, I can handle anything. It's like there's suddenly more oxygen in the room. I remember the first time I went up to a high elevation and there were these oxygen bars, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it does for me. And if it doesn't do that for you, then you won't let it do to you the terrible things I let it do to me. And I didn't even connect the dots. Alcohol literally saved my life many, many times over. In Bill's story, it talks about, when the Great Depression, the market crashes, and people are jumping from the towers of high finance, and that disgusts him. He goes to the bar because it gives him courage. And that's how I am. That's what it does for me. That I remember sitting at this T junction overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. I'm ready to drive off the edge of the cliff. I'm just waiting for the light to turn green because I don't know, bad karma or something. I'm a good girl, right? And this miracle happened. And because I remembered there was a keg party out at the beach and I didn't die that night. That's the kind of power that alcohol has in my life. And I don't ever want to forget that. I cannot let one day go by if I don't remember that, for me, there are only two answers. It's a whole lot of alcohol or it's a whole lot of God. I don't know anything about shades of gray. For me, it's all about black and white. God is either everything or he's nothing. What's my choice? I'm either in or I'm out. That's it. I'm a very big believer in God is everything. And I didn't understand that statement because my ideas of God, my understanding of God was really screwed up because I come from a long line of missionaries and a lot of bad things were done to me in the name of God. I came from a very abusive house. And the only reason that's important is because it has nothing to do with my drinking, but it had a lot to do with my resistance to wanting to hear what you guys are saying. And the reality is that any concept of God that you know if I can figure out God, then I'm not going to be able to trust that God. My God has always been something far beyond, far bigger. The universe is expanding, and so better be my God each day. We grow in understanding and effectiveness. And over these years, like it's really easy to think that I remember thinking that, well, if God's so great and if God loves us, then why isn't he doing something about fill in the blank? I mean, this was back when like people were starving in Ethiopia and AIDS was coming to a head. And I'm getting sober and I'm watching. I had a friend who got sober and a few months in got diagnosed with HIV AIDS. And I get to watch that person get sober, go through the steps, make amends, and stay sober until he died, and grateful for the opportunity to get to do that. And it blew my mind because it's like the way I'd always felt was like, if I'm supposed to do this and good stuff is supposed to happen. I mean, I'm used to walking around with this Eeyore cloud, like Andy will tell you, weird stuff happens to me. I don't get like mild stuff. I'm an extreme, and a lot of people say, wow, you work an extreme program. Actually, I don't. I just do what's in this book. That's it. And if that's extreme to you, I don't know what to tell you, but I do get extreme results. I do get extreme results. I want to be all the way in. And they told me, honey, sit all the way down, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth because, you need to learn to listen and listen to learn. Because that was true. And I was so grateful that I had people who were not going to make it easy on me. In fact, they made it hard. They didn't make it difficult, but they challenged me. They raised the bar. They believed that there was more in me than I believed there was. They didn't let me leave that first meeting without a job, without a sponsor. That first sponsor, I call her my starter sponsor. I don't believe in temporary sponsorship because, hey, we're all temporary, let's be honest here, you know. Um, but I mean, I've buried a bunch of sponsors, so you know that's why. What are you gonna do? Um, but she was my starter sponsor. She had 2 months of sobriety, 2 months. And I joke a lot that she was only a couple pages ahead of me in the big book. But what she did for me was she taught me a lot of the fundamentals that I'm still using today. Things like if you weren't there from prayer to prayer, it's my opinion, you were not there. You know, you go early, you stay late, you get a job, you know, and when your sponsor says jump, there's only one question you're allowed to ask. Exactly how high would you like that? Right. She gave me full permission not to like it, whatever it was, out in the parking lot. You have all the temper tantrums you want, but then you just Nike, do it, whatever. Like, I don't have to have an opinion on everything. And I can tell the difference from where I am today from my third step by the number of opinions that I have. And I got a lot of stuff still happening. Like, you know, one of the most misquoted things from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, people get up to the podium and they say, I'm going to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, and how it works. That's not what it says. It says what we were like, what happened, and what we are like now, because I've changed, but it's life, and life is still the same. I was living in New York through 9/11. Like, what? Does that mean we should all go out and drink? No, actually, it was the opposite. The community came together. Right? No matter what, this is a way of life that works in rough going. That I have, it's like when you go on I didn't want to go on roller coasters, but my kids did. And so I've ridden a lot of roller coasters. And when that bar comes down across you for because it's going to do the loop de loop de loop de loop de loop de loop de loop, you're right. You know, I know I'm not going to fall out. That's what God's like. When I get up in the morning, I need that kind of security in my higher power, right? That's to trust and rely on a God. How did you do that? Well, the first thing I had to do is forget everything I think I know. They told me to find the God in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, to start with, I don't know, because when you get to teachable, you know, that's what it looks like. That's when you can finally get help. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we basically everything we do is, you know, it's about awareness and the dressing and amending, you know, that's what we do. Like, wake up because this is my life and it's happening and it's not my problem. It's my problem with my problem over and over again. And I want to think that God, I know a lot of you probably believe, and if it works for you, then fine, you know, that everything happens for a reason. I cannot sign on for that one. That doesn't work for me because when you've had the kind of horrific things happen to me, you know, when you've been abducted, when you've been abused, when you've been truly, you know, traumatized, what you're telling me is that I did something to deserve that. Now, what I found in inventory is that I have used those things to rationalize my bad behavior. It's how I'm using them today that I'm inventorying. But somebody was going to get abducted that night. Somebody was going to get hit that night. My father was going to terrorize somebody. It just happened to be me. And when you're near sick people, bad things happen. You know, when you get a wet drunk in and they start vomiting, they're not vomiting on you. They're vomiting and you happen to be next to them. And that's what my life was full of. It was full of a lot of really, really sick people. And the truth is, I came in here and I didn't respect God at all because of things like everything happens for a reason. And what I found is that I can't respect any God that I can actually figure out because that's a me size thing. And this has got to be bigger than anything. That I have to have a God that there is no problem that is too big for. And how do you learn to supersize that, right? I remember being very afraid of doing the third step. And I said to my sponsor, I said, well, what if God wants me to, you know, be a missionary in Africa? She said, then you're going to love it. And I jokingly, I mean, I told you guys, Boston's the only place I ever said I didn't want to live, right? I told you that. So, and what am I basically but a missionary? It's just not Africa. But the truth is, I love it. In fact, actually, one of my aunts was here visiting, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and she started asking me some questions, and she is like they travel the world, they are missionaries, and I'm telling her about my work in Alcoholics Anonymous and the things that I do and people that I sponsor. I'm just, because she's asking questions. And when she's leaving, she said, "I'm so glad somebody went into the family business." And that's when I realized that I'd kind of like, all those years earlier, like my worst fear had become my best blessing. Now that's my God. I have a God of alchemy. Okay. A God that, what we do here is we turn any negative into a positive. That's what we do. My God, I like to say it's like he's got a Sharpie. And if it's a subtraction problem, like 1 - 1, he just thinks this little teeny tiny little motion. And all of a sudden it's 1 + 1. And it's a blessing and not a curse. I don't believe that everything happens for a reason, but I do believe that God can turn anything to his purpose. That my God is the God of lemonade. That everybody gets lemons, but not everybody is willing to squeeze those puppies and trust and rely that God's got enough sugar to make anything sweet. That's my job. I happen to be an artist, and I when I was in New York, I was in grad school there, and if you don't know, you spend about 2 years putting together a big art exhibit. And just a couple months before that exhibit, somebody shot a bottle rocket through the window, and the whole place burned up, right? And boom, gone. And I don't have a whole lot of extra money, guys. I mean, I grew up below the poverty line, and when we got to go into the building was okay, but all of the work was destroyed. I didn't mention that my medium happens to be smoke and fire, and I literally paint with fire. That's what I do. And fortunately, I was out of state at the time, so the cops did look at me first, but I had a good alibi. And but it was like God whispering in my ear, saying, "Hey, kid, that was your idea of smoke painting. Here's mine." And I could see how the fire had entered the room and rushed and gone up the ceiling, and the light fixtures were melted. The clock looked like it was straight out of a Dali painting, and I didn't feel traumatized. I didn't. I knew for the first time. I was about 5, 6 years over, five, I don't know. Anyway, and I knew that fires just happen, that that's just life, and it just happened to me. It wasn't about me. It's everybody gets stuff. And we forget that a lot because it feels really personal, because I live this self-centered life. But you guys have taught me to live a different kind of life. I came in here thinking if you loved me enough, I would be okay. And you taught me if I love you enough, that it would melt the polar ice cap from around my heart and I would finally feel the love that's there all the time. Now, here's the downside. You see, I want the love to come from the right people. I want to know that it's coming from my mother or my sister or my brother or my whoever, okay? And it doesn't always. But the love I give comes back to me sometimes in the most surprising ways, right? We don't know whose hearts we're touching, and we don't know how that's going to come back to us. So, but what does happen is that when I love you, I heal my heart because I didn't believe in love. I didn't believe in the power of amends. I really didn't. I thought that making amends was letting you off the hook. And I had to go through a process where I realized that you don't get off the hook. That's just not a thing, because that's between you and your higher power. I ended up in here because I couldn't stand myself. I didn't like the woman in the glass. I didn't like looking at me. And there are two people in that sentence, the I and the me, the spirit and the ego. And I had to start getting my principles in alignment with my actions. And that's what these steps are really about. That the amends that I'm making is, and it is first and foremost so that I clear that channel so I can hear what God really is. Because it's really interesting left alone in that echo chamber of my head with the chatter of 1,000 monkeys and all those stage characters that I have. God, God's voice and my voice can very easily get confused. I start thinking I know what God wants for me. I start thinking I got it. And I know now, like when the one thing I will say is that when I hear myself say, I got it, it's time to be scared. Fear is a blessing, guys. It really is. I mean, it gets you to recoil as if from a hot flame. I I I got divorced this morning, and I get divorced every morning because if I don't do exactly what it says upon awakening, ask God to divorce me from self-pity, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And I ask God to make me the best wife, mother, daughter, sister, sponsor, sponsee that I can possibly be. I can't be married to David. I can't sponsor anybody. I can't be a contributing member to the world. I'll be selfish and self-centered. I'll be defended and defensive. I'll be needing to make sure that I'm okay. I'll be selfish and self-centered. It always comes down to that third column. Does God have my third column? If God doesn't have my third column, you're going to see a reaction from me. And it's that remote control. You see, my family, they did a number on me. They wired me up real good. I mean, it was a lot of, it took some time to heal. It did. But they installed these buttons and they're gonna go and they're gonna try and push them. But what inventory does is it cuts those wires so that they don't get to decide if I'm gonna have a bad day. There's no such thing as I did it because no, I take full responsibility for all of my actions. That's what amends is really about. See, and forgiveness is a big part of that. I can't be free if I don't forgive you. I can't move on with my life because I'm so busy being the jailer. I'm trying to make sure that my father is doing his time and I can't go on into the beautiful life that God is trying to call me to because I'm too busy wasting my energy, wasting my thoughts on people that really shouldn't matter. That's the reality. The opposite of love, I know people say all the time, the opposite of love is fear. Anybody like that? Andy knows better than to nod. I don't. I don't. I mean, I don't. The opposite of love is nothing. It is the absence. It is to be unaffected. If I stop loving you, I'm no longer connected to you. That's all. Right? That it is okay for me to step away from mean people and not assume malice. But if they, that my family's still nuts. They're still out there doing crazy stuff. They are, when my mom died, it was ugly. And I'd done my best with my family. I really have made a lot of amends, done everything I knew, took my family down, my children down there to try to get to know them. And they got to see the best of my mom and the best of my dad. My father's never been alone with my children, and he doesn't know it. Did you get that part? And he doesn't know it. It's just when he would say, "Well, I'll babysit," I'd say, "But we really want to spend. We're only here for a short period of time. David and I get to be together all the time. We're here to see you." And think that's what kindness, kind and loving towards all, not kind and loving towards those I think deserve it, because I deserve to be kind and loving. I get to be the woman God called me to be. I get to be the daughter that I was called to be. I'm the one that put my mom in hospice. I'm the one that did all these things, right? And then on a dime, all of a sudden, the whole thing blows up and she's calling the cops on me. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I think the cancer got in her frontal lobe, and my sisters, and they haven't spoken to me since before my mother died. And that was in 2019. And she died the same week as my father-in-law. And so I don't have one of those beautiful bedside things. In fact, the last thing, my mother said to me was really unkind. In fact, like really hurtful. And I didn't have to respond. And when my sisters planned the wedding, which I knew I was supposed to to participate in, they said they'd made it for such and such date. And I said, I don't think I can be there because Charlie, my father-in-law, is dying. He's in the ICU. And they said, well, that would be too bad. He died on Thursday. We were able to get on a plane on Friday so I could go to my mom's funeral. And when my sisters came, they had like this, like, I don't know, it was like a rehearsal dinner. It wasn't a wake. I mean, it was like a rehearsal dinner. It was like a fancy restaurant, whatever. I don't know. So I'm showing up at this place, and my sisters who have not spoken to me, they've moved my mother in the middle of the night. I don't know where my mother was living for the last 9 months of her life. Money goes missing. I mean, it's like a bad soap opera, right? And I walk in and they rush up as if nothing had happened because, we're good alcoholic family and like, we pretend things don't happen. And they're just, like, huh. And all I did was I just put my hand up and I said, we're not going to do this right now. And that's all I had to say. Um, and the next day I found out that mom had died, before they bothered to text me. And, I found out that I showed up at the burial and they didn't even have a seat for me in the family section. But you know what I had done? I'd gone to a meeting that morning, and two women that I didn't even know, one had more sobriety than me, one had a little bit less. They came with me up into the mountains of Appalachian. They stayed with me because I didn't want to do anything to debase myself, because I wanted to be the woman that God called me to be. That's the power of this program. Right. And so here, fast forward, we're going through it again with my dad. They moved my dad in the middle of the night. The money went missing, all of this stuff. I have no idea. And what's different is that I don't have to make the same mistakes. I don't have to make the same mistakes because nobody can take away what I've done right. No one can change that. And I don't need them to give me credit. I don't need them to stand up and applaud. I need to be able to put my head on my pillow and have clean conscience. I know that I have been incredibly kind and loving and generous to my parents, even when they haven't deserved it, because I deserve to be that woman. That my children have seen me do that without being a doormat, that there is, an up to which I do not always put. There are limits, right? And that's my job to step back. You can do whatever you want. Like the world and its people are often quite wrong. And acceptance is a very important thing. It helps me to understand what I'm looking at so I can better hear God. So I don't walk into, I knew that there was going to be a bad scene. That's why I went to the meeting before I went to the funeral. I knew that my husband was, he was bereft. He was raised by his father alone, right? I mean, he had lost his, like, the day before. I can't count on him the way I usually would. But you guys were there for me. And I'm sitting in that meeting and I'm raising my hand and they never called on me. They never called on me. And I remember just crying and thinking, really, God, you're going to leave me alone today? I mean, and then they asked for burning desires, and I raised my hand and I told everybody what was going on. I had to also find my voice here. I had to learn to squeak. There's no malice in being a squeaky wheel. They just squeak until they get the oil they need. I chase the people that have the sobriety that I want. I will get on planes, trains, and automobiles. I go across the world, to do stuff when Alcoholics Anonymous calls, when my sponsor asks me to, show up, whether it's in California or Las Vegas or wherever it is. Of course, I'm going to. It's an honor and a privilege to get to be with people who are really walking this path. I try very hard to live my life in such a way that if the volume went off and it was like a silent movie, you would know that I love you. You would know by my actions, not by my words, because people talk a whole lot of talk. But we want to watch their feet. That's what I was told. Watch their feet. And I don't need you to do anything for me. I needed you to show me how to trust and rely on God because I was beyond human aid. I don't go out looking for people I can help. I go out looking for people that are beyond human aid because that's an alcoholic, right? If I could have fixed me, I would have. If it was fixable by a human power, then the yoga, Pilates, therapy, antidepressants, going up the Amazon, going to spiritual places, all that stuff, that would have worked. Those aren't necessarily bad things to do. They just don't treat what I have. And I've got this sickness down deep in my soul that I don't know how to get rid of. And I have this idea that I should and that ego it's always growing back, right? It's like I'm a big believer in going through the steps and then going through the steps and then going through the steps and the traditions of the concepts. I'm a total three legacies person, by the way. Just got to tell you, if you've got relationships, like you, the concepts are the best thing in the world for relationships. But anyway, but that ego, it rebuilds. And I tell people it's like brushing your teeth. Just because you brush your teeth every morning and every night doesn't mean you shouldn't go get your teeth cleaned by, a professional, right? Everyone. So that's why I believe that I need to stay in this continuously. I have to be willing to look continuously, and it works both ways. If when I believe that I'm too small to make a difference, one of my favorite little jokes is, because I grew up in mosquito country. All you need is one little mosquito and you're like covered in bug bites. So every little bit, I'm a big believer in that ripple effect. I really am, and what you guys have taught me is this spiritual alchemy. You've taught me that no matter what happens in my life, that I have the opportunity. There's this great line that it says, avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but when, not if, problems come, that I'm supposed to cheerfully, attitude adjustment was what they said the other meaning of AA is, cheerfully let God demonstrate his omnipotence through me. How about that? I mean, happy, joyous, and free. That's all I ever wanted. I mean, is that really too much to ask? Happy, joyous, and free. Anybody here not want to be happy, joyous, and free? I mean, we hear about it all the time. How many people actually know where it is in the big book, though? And the fact that when we're really talking about happy, joyous, and free, and it's on page 133 if you don't know. But anyway, it says that we are sure God wants us happy, joyous, and free. And that is a whole nother universe from where I walked in the doors. See, I want to be happy, joyous, and free. But when I started to really think about how different my life would be if I could go for 24 hours truly believing that God wants me happy, joyous, and free, we're playing a whole different game. That's the God of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the God of the big book. My biggest mistakes are in my thinking. I read years ago that a spiritual person makes about 600 mistakes in the day. That's like the Dalai Lama, guys. Okay. And so I'm not supposed to have any. Mistakes are really interesting. Like it talks about them a lot in the big book, but a lot of times we don't talk about that. We just talk about selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. But mistakes are things that we do believing they are the right thing at the time. Anybody ever take a spelling test and purposely misspell Mississippi or whatever else? No, we don't do that. I mean, you're not doing it because you're angry or, you're going to show somebody or you're resentful or fearful. No, it's just for those of us old enough to remember, like you would give your paper to somebody else to read because it's hard to see your own mistakes. I need some distance because between me and me, there is fear, doubt, insecurity, resentments, all of this stuff. And I need to be able to get some perspective. And that's why I continue to do this program, all the steps, all the time. I say yes whenever I can. And life hasn't been easy that's what they said. Life wasn't easy for they were talking about the first three, right? And here I am, I'm in Boston and there's still there's a lot going on in my life. In less than a week, I'll have back surgery number 7. How many people get to say back surgery number 7? Get to. Did you hear me say that? I get to. I get to have back surgery number 7. I have a doctor who's not quitting on me. I have a spine. I have a disease that is basically ripping I'm fused. Most of my back and neck are fused, and I have a separate disease that I am. My muscles are ripping the titanium out of place. Literally, I heard it rip out like around New Year's. It was a gross sound, and I have a doctor who's not going to quit on me. And for many years, no one wanted to touch me because I'm not an easy case. I mean, I don't have just scoliosis or just this or just that. And please don't tell me you pulled your back and you were in bed for a week and now you know a little bit. No, you don't. Call me in 54 years. You know, this has been my life. I was born deformed. I really was. Like there are lots of things and you know what? I was born special. So are you. Everybody's got stuff. That's the reality. Everybody's got stuff. We don't know whatever other people's things are. People look at me and Andy will tell you, I mean, he's shorter than I thought he was going to be. I, I mean, they measure, I'm a very tall woman, okay? And you can't tell that on Zoom. But I'm a very tall woman and um, and you people take one look at me and they think certain things and they have no idea that every step I've ever taken has hurt. That standing, feels like something's stabbing me. That, running made me want to throw up from the time I was a child. We do judge books by their cover. It's really important. You guys helped me to get past that. I want to think I know all kinds of stuff. And it's not the things I don't know that have gotten me in the most trouble in my life. It's the things that I think I know that turn out not to be true. And so when I get back to I don't know, I'm teachable. I didn't think you guys had anything to teach me. I thought these steps sounded like Mickey Mouse and okay, whatever. I've done harder than that. I mean, I can meditate and put my legs behind my head, and I've been doing it for years and chanting with the Hare Krishnas and swimming with the piranhas. I mean, what are you going to teach me? I had a whole lot of spiritual knowledge, but I had very little practice. And I needed to learn discipline, and I hated that word. That word discipline made me think about being dragged down the stairs by my hair. But what I learned is that that word comes from the same place as the word to teach, that we let God teach us in this simple way. And that just for today, I get it, man. I'm still a temper tantrum girl. I mean, I want my way. I do. Don't you? That's human. But here's the thing is that I've learned to use every character defect can be a character asset. And I've learned to have spiritual temper tantrums. You don't get the remote control. You don't get to push my buttons. You don't get to decide if I'm happy, joyous, and free. That is between me and my God. When God's got my third column, I am joyful. I'm spending these last, days going into this next surgery, doing, a bunch of stuff, saying yes to things like this. And I've said yes to some things after. And, who knows? Maybe I'll have to cancel some of them. I hope not. But, I expect miracles. I hear a lot of people say expectations are premeditated resentments. I hope you throw that in the trash today and never say it again. This book, this program says to expect miracles. I see miracles in all these boxes. People who should not be here, I should not be here. There is an empty hole in Texas where I belong. That's the truth. I haven't gotten what I deserve. I haven't. I've gotten so much better. And you know what? If it comes with a side of 7 back surgeries, I'm okay with that. I'm I'm still one of the most blessed people I know. My daughter called me today. She's 22. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. She lives out in LA. She's getting on a plane today to go spend the weekend with her brother. My siblings don't want to be any like there's a war zone. Last time I saw my brother, he threw me up against a wall and tried to choke me. That's the family I have. And my kids are getting on a plane to meet in Utah to go skiing, to hang out with each other. My son called me the other day. He's about to turn 20. I didn't know kids that age could like their parents. You guys taught me how to be the mother that I deserved to have. I did. We all deserve to feel seen and heard and loved and called to greatness. We do. And what I found is that that childhood of mine that was so broken and I was so angry about, you know what that was? Man, that was God. That was God calling. That was God telling me, you know what? It shouldn't be this way because God is willing to do something. God is willing to solve the problems of the world. And you know how I know? Because he sent Lisa and Mimi and Karen and Andy and Caleb and Cass and Melissa and Charlie and Wyatt and Louise and Rachel and Paulette and Hugh and Paul and Lavelle and Emma and Becky and Marcus, and I can keep going, and me, because not on my watch. I will not let it happen on my watch. I will be there when anybody anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am absolutely willing to be responsible. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for my sobriety because I need you guys when I'm going into the OR next week. So thank you. God bless and have a beautiful day. Don't make other plans.